Time Zone Massive Media welcomes you once again. In this episode, we are going to review the international law of treaty and the reasons why the leader of indigenous people of Biafra, Mazi Kanu, insisted that he cannot be tried in any Nigerian court. With today's, we will call in an international lawyer to review and give us the brief definition and what international treaty and how the binding force affects the states that sign the treaties. We will listen to the barrister and hear his version of the treaty, what it entails, and how it affects the states and individuals. Before we listen to the international barrister, we'll ask you to subscribe to this channel, like, share, and leave your comment. Do not forget to hit the notification bell icon and also share the videos to your loved ones, friends, and well-wishers. It is through this we learn together. Thank you for listening, and
Prohibition and Prevention Act says I cannot be tried in Nigeria. That's the law of Nigeria. I can never be tried in any court of law in Nigeria. That's what the law says. Anybody standing in trial or coming to try me is a terrorist. That's what the law says. Section 1, Section 2, Section 3F of Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act. That's what it says. To any court which fails to try me is committed as terrorism. It's very clear. You cannot violate a treaty that Nigeria entered into and then come to try that very person is not done anywhere in the world. So you must be aware of that. So that is why there is all these ridiculous delays. That is what Supreme Court said. I did not jump in. My home was invaded. They came to kill me and I survived. They came to Kenya to kidnap me, brought me back to this country and seeking to try me, which the law says cannot happen. You cannot violate a treaty that Nigeria entered into and then you hope to stand on that illegality to conduct the trial is not done anywhere in the world. I have the my case. Nobody has, there's no exception. No exception whatsoever. That's what the law says. Section.
Now let us listen to the lawyer and hear what he has to say.
Participating in the drawing up of the treaty. The signature of the treaty establishes that the negotiated text is authentic and definitive. In other words, the end of the negotiations results from the signature of the treaty. Once the treaty is signed, its text is final. The draft treaty becomes the treaty. Treaties are usually identified by referring to the place and the date of their signature. For instance, the Convention on the Law of Treaties was signed in the city of Vienna on 23 May 1969. And aside from the authentication of the treaty, what are the other legal effects deriving from the signature of a treaty? Well, the most important effect is that by signing a treaty, a state may express its consent to be bound by the treaty. However, a state may express its consent to be bound by the treaty. Of the Vienna Convention makes clear the signature expresses the consent to be bound by the treaty only when the treaty provides that the signature shall have that effect, or it is otherwise established that the negotiating parties were agreed that the signature would have such effect, or again, that the intention of the negotiating parties to give that effect to the signature appears from the full powers of the representatives involved, or such intention was expressed during the negotiations. It expresses the consent to be bound by the treaty if that is the common intent of the negotiating parties. If they do not have such an intent, the signature cannot be considered as expressing the final consent to be bound by the treaty. And in such a case, a separate and distinct act will be needed to express such consent. That additional act is called the ratification of the treaty. The ratification may also be called the acceptance, approval, or accession to the treaty. And in each case, and as the definition to be found in Article 2 of the Vienna Convention reads, it is an international act whereby a state or an international organization establishes on the international plane its consent to be bound by the treaty. And it is important to stress that, as Article 11 of the Vienna Convention makes clear, there is not one single means of expressing consent to be bound by a treaty. The contracting parties are free to decide for each treaty which one is to be preferred. The treaty to immediately enter into force upon its signature, and therefore considered that the signature is the act by which consent to be bound by the treaty is given. Or states may prefer to give to themselves a moment of thought and evaluation, and eventually also a moment of democratic approval at the national level, so as to choose for a ratification process. When consent to be bound is not expressed by the signature of the treaty, the final clauses of the treaty usually provide for the requirement of ratification and the procedure by which the treaty will take effect. In case of a bilateral treaty, the day when the instruments of ratifications of both parties are exchanged will usually be chosen as the day upon which the treaty will enter into force. And this is because it simply makes no sense to have a treaty binding between only a few parties if it is a multilateral treaty. Hence, in the final clauses of the treaty, you will most of the time find a provision entitled Entry into Force, which states the conditions for such entry into force. Well, take for instance Article 84 of the Vienna Convention, which require 35 ratifications for the convention to enter into force. Furthermore, the same article states that the convention will enter into force 30 days after the 35th ratification. Before that day, 35 states have expressed their consent to be bound by the treaty, but they are not yet bound by the treaty. Once that day arrives, the treaty enters into force, which means it is legally binding on the states that have already ratified it. From that day, and from that day only, the parties that have already ratified the treaty must perform it in good faith, pacta sunt servanda, or after a period of time specified under the treaty. In case of the Vienna Convention, that period is 30 days. The obligation to perform the treaty in good faith begins 30 days after each new ratification.
Thank you. You have heard him and what he has to say. Nigeria ratified these treaties, they appended to them, and they accepted to abide by the law. But it is unfortunate that when they come back to Nigeria, the president, the Minister of Justice, the foreign ministers, they come back, then they turn around to disrespect and fail to abide by the obligations, by the treaties they signed before the international community. And that is what the leader of indigenous people of Biafra, Mazi Kanu, is reminding Nigerian government. They want to deviate from the conventional and human rights and international law to Mullah system, Taliban system, and banditry legal system, whereby they dictate They tell the judge what to do. They do not allow the judge to use the legal system to handle any case that comes before them. That is the difference. So they push out their own system and introduce a new system. When they are taking oath, they will tell you they will abide by the laws of Nigeria and they will put it into practice, and they say, help me God. But the moment their opponents comes into the system, fall into the prey of legal system, they turn it upside down and want to dictate. That is the problem now the government is facing with the case of Mazi Kanu. But unfortunately for them, Mazi Kanu knows the law. He tries to remind them, this is what you said before the international community. Then how come you want to turn it upside down? To do your own wish, to persecute me. As such, it is the government that entered into terrorism and not himself. They came to his house to kill him. He survived. They came to kidnap him again and to try him. That is against the international law. In the next episode, we will dive in to give clear understanding of what Nigerian government has done. With this, we come to the end of this very program. We ask you to subscribe to this channel, like it, share, hit the notification icon, and finally, do not forget to leave your comment. It is very, very important. Thank you very much for listening, and God bless you. You look into it, form your own opinion with the international lawyers' clarification on the treaty. Thank you, and God bless you all. Bye.